Back in October 2018, I did a video titled The Only Anime MMORPGs and MMOs Left Worth Playing in 2018 and 2019. It ended up getting over 320,000 views, over 5,500 likes, and thousands of comments. I noticed some of the games in the comments I hadn't really played very much of, if any at all, and I had come to the conclusion that I'd included a few games in that list that honestly aren't worth populating a list of anime MMOs currently worth playing in 2019 with. So allow me to provide you all with a slightly larger, more inclusive list of anime MMOs now that I've had the opportunity to play through each and every one of these in more detail. Do note real quick that every game will have its link included in the description and the pinned comment below. I haven't really included Phantasy Star Online 2 in the top video in a very long while. This is because the game, although incredible, just isn't really as readily available as the other games in the list. This is because PSO2 never really officially launched in the West. Instead, to play the game, you need to download third-party software that isn't officially supported by Sega to translate and play the game. You also need to navigate their website, completely in Japanese, mind you, to register. This is somewhat of a nuisance for people that don't even know if they want to actually play the game or not, but it is fairly easy to, circumvent if you Google around the web for a guide. Nevertheless, after a tremendous amount of you were surprised that I opted to not include PSO2, I chose to this time because, let's be honest here, not many games really come close in terms of quality. Its population is off the charts, honestly, having over 10 different servers, all with hundreds of channels that are filled with tons of people. Graphically, yes, Soul Worker, I guess, is the most crisp, most accurate, I'd say, but you don't really get any anime-ier than PSO2. It does it better than any other MMO out there. Its combat is a little clunkier though, and definitely shows its age, but the amount of features the game has completely trumps any other anime MMO out there. If you want to get into Phantasy Star Online 2, you can find a guide for it on our website, mmobite.tv. Area Games is one of the worst publishers in the MMO sphere. They take good games, they make them heavily pay to win, unbalanced pieces of garbage, and then eventually shut them down when people stop playing them. So when I initially played Eden Eternal and saw the desolate wasteland the game had become, I lost all hope in ever really progressing through the game. Then I came across the private server, Eden Eternal Vendetta. If you've watched us in the last year or two, you'd know that we've tried out quite a few private servers for a large variety of games. Eden Eternal Vendetta is actually one of the better ones out there, providing players with the opportunity to experience the game since the pay-to-win that Area Games introduced into it. The population is also several times larger than Area's version as well, especially after they sold their company to Game Ago. Eden Eternal takes place in the complete opposite spectrum of the anime niche, chibi-inspired anime graphics, and gives us one of the last older-gen anime MMO feels left. It's beautiful, as are the skill effects, and honestly, with Flife, Fiesta, and other games like them all hopelessly clinging to their last breaths of life, Eden Eternal Vendetta just might be our last refuge. Like PSO2, a lot of you guys were really upset when I didn't include Dungeon Fighter Online in my previous video. I get it, I played a good amount of the game over the last month and I can see why you all enjoy it so much. Dungeon Fighter doesn't really look very anime-ish, I guess, as opposed to other titles in this list, but there is no denying it is anime-inspired. I've played my fair share of side-scrolling MMOs like this, and I gotta say, Dungeon Fighter is one of the better ones. It's fast, very fast, overflowing with story, and probably has some of the best combat effects in a game of its kind. Seriously, if combat is something you're interested in, then let me reassure you right now that Dungeon Fighter Online is at the top of its game. You won't really find better combat in a side-scrolling anime-inspired MMO. The game has tens of thousands of active players as well, so there's always someone to play it with. And yes, I am aware that Steam lists a mere 500 concurrent players. So before claiming I don't know what I'm talking about, note that I'm referring to the players that don't play through Steam as well, which is a large majority. Mabinogi was once the king of the anime MMO genre. It used a graphical style that I hadn't seen present in other MMOs. It offered players the option of playing the game in an unconventional way as well, living your life. You could fight monsters, you could level, craft, farm, fish, quest, explore, just socialize, age up. Like, I'm still of the opinion that Mabinogi is still unrivaled in the freedom that it actually gives you. I've seen other games like Black Desert try and do something similar, but nothing comes close to offering what Mabinogi did, or still does rather. The combat though is very dated. granted, and uses a very, I guess, confusing for first-time players system. The population is also on the lower end of the spectrum, unfortunately. If you've never played Mabinogi, though, I do recommend you try it out solely to experience what the game has to offer that no other game does. If Blade and Soul were to take place in an instanced hub-based side-scrolling reality, then Closers would be it. They're both comprised of mostly tits. So if you're a prepubescent boy, a closet perv, or just generally interested in titties, then Closers is one of the few MMOs for you. Again, Code Closers is actually a private server, a more densely populated, more actively updated, and further ahead in content alternative to En Masse's version. Now, don't get me wrong though, I've said it before and I will say it again, En Masse Entertainment are not a bad publisher, quite the contrary. They're actually one of the better ones out there, one of the only decent Western ones. I mean, you know, like no company is infallible, so naturally people will find fault with them, but Code Closers is just further ahead, has less content in the cash shop and more available to obtain in game, and has custom content and events that go on pretty much every month. This, coupled with a more free-to-play friendly playstyle, makes it the go-to for me, and hopefully anyone that wants to level the characters faster than on the official server. It's also one of the more beautiful anime MMOs out there, especially if, once again, you like titties. And the combat's pretty good to boot. I know I'm gonna get some mixed feelings, I guess, on this one, as I will be honest here, there are some issues with Tree of Savior, but in the grand scheme of things, Tree of Savior is probably the only good Ragnarok-like MMO alive right now. It has some of the best sprite graphics and offers some of the highest quality spell effects I've seen on a mage, and that is what I primarily play, but I will let you know, people either love the game or have an almost unparalleled hatred for it. The combat is fantastic though, it's fast, it feels great, and the classes have varied enough playstyles to warrant playing. The world is perhaps one of the most aesthetically beautiful anime worlds I have ever seen in an MMO, and that is saying something. Unfortunately, the population isn't nearly as high as most of the other games in this list, but who knows, maybe this will, I guess, change some people's opinions, and maybe they'll go ahead and give it a try. Kurtzspell is yet to actually release officially, but they recently held a small beta for us Westerners to try out. Although I didn't actually get to participate personally, as I had honestly been too busy to, a friend of mine, however, did, and he spent hours recording content for us. If you've ever played a game like Vindictus or Dragoness, then you'll know exactly what kind of game this is. I mean, Closers and Soul Worker are more or less the same as well, but Kurtzspell seems a little smaller, perhaps. It offers some fantastic character creation options, one of the most extensive actually for an anime MMO. However, I did notice that some of the movements were a little off, which is fine. It was a beta after all, and they, you know, have room to improve. Combat, though, looks like it could actually be even better than Soul Workers when it finally launches, being comparable to Black Desert if Black Desert were an anime MMO. Pokemon Revolution Online isn't an official game by any means. It was created by fans just like every other Pokemon MMO out there. However, it provides us the ability to play Pokemon games like never before, with other people, a large group of people, together, something Game Freak has never done and still has yet to do. It is probably the most complete, closest thing you'll ever get to an official Pokemon MMO, so honestly, if you're in the mood to be the very best, like no one ever was, and feel like enslaving adorable little Pokemon to murder one another, look no further. It looks like Pokemon, it feels like Pokemon. I still play it, and I still love it, even with the other visually superior alternatives like Poké1. Maybe with more work, Poké1 will end up superior, but right now, no. Critica is a unique one. It's pretty much a carbon copy of Soul Worker, but it was released before Soul Worker was. So if kawaii teenagers in a post-apocalyptic world aren't really your thing, maybe Critica will be. It's got a more mature adult theme going for it, and like Blade and Soul, has quite an emphasis on boobies. But I feel like every mature themed game does. Combat is noticeably worse than Soul Worker, but still better than most other action games of its kind. Graphically though, the game is good. I mean, the environments are okay, but the character models are fantastic. And let's be real here, you all know that dressing up your character is part of every game you play, so character models matter. Population probably sits at around 1,000, maybe a little more concurrent players. Definitely worth trying if you haven't yet. So I was kinda on the fence about including Final Fantasy XIV in this list. Why? Because it doesn't really fit the traditional look of an anime MMO. I mean, it looks like a 3D fantasy MMORPG, but everyone refers to it as an anime MMO, so here it is. Final Fantasy XIV, the king of the anime genre. If any game deserved that title, it would definitely be it, or PSO2. But Final Fantasy XIV because it's released in English. It's also more polished and plays in an open world as opposed to a quest hub. At later levels, the combat is actually pretty damn good too. Think Rift or WoW. Graphically, the game is one of the most beautiful MMOs I have ever seen, especially the further you progress through the game. And its story, man, if you were to try any game once, then it would be Final Fantasy XIV. Population is huge, numbering in the hundreds of thousands of active subscribers still, and with their new expansion on the horizon, you can expect that number to increase back into the millions. So, that is pretty much my list of anime MMOs and MMORPGs to play throughout the year of 2019. Yes, I opted to not include MapleStory 2 because it has had a plethora of complaints and I found myself bored, I guess, not having anything really to do the further I got into the game. I know some of you still enjoy MapleStory 2, and I'm not arguing the fact that it is a good, fun game, but the population has dropped by over 80% in a few months, and a lack of content is why. Regardless, hopefully this list helps you find that special anime MMO that you've been looking for. Anyway guys, that is it for me. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Peace. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, drop a like, leave a comment, consider subscribing to my channel over here, checking out another video, or following both Wiggy and I on Twitter at BiteSticks or BiteWiggy to just chat or hang out.